What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Mr. Dan here as always, and today I have a double film review of two British films from the 1970s that I didn't know existed until just a few days ago when I learned about them from Roy from the Blue Roy Movie channel. Check out that channel. He was a guest on Shooting the Shit with Jim on Jim's movie channel, which is a show that I think he does every other Saturday. I've been a guest on there. And by having it in the afternoon here, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Central, he's able to get a lot of guests from the United Kingdom. So, and the great thing about that is that you get some different perspectives. And that's what happened with his conversation with Roy. I listened to the whole thing in between doing garden chores, but and I got caught up after. But it was really good and really informative, and Roy really knew his stuff. And like I said, he was throwing out the names of some films, one of which, The Incident, I hadn't thought about in years, with Martin Sheen. But these two films I had never heard of. Fright from 1971, starring Susan George, and The Black Panther from 1977, starring Donald Sumter, The Black Panther. Both are involving crime. And let's start with Fright from 71. This is directed by Peter Collinson, who's directed a number of films with creepy characters, although he's probably best known for directing the original The Italian Job, which is pretty funny because I just coincidentally watched that for the first time the other night. I've seen the remake, so I wanted to watch the original. So I'll be reviewing that eventually, and I might even be racing the scale cars, the 1/64th scale cars that you saw in the movie. For some added fun. But apart from that film, he's directed a number of films with some real creeps, including Straight On Till Morning, which I've reviewed on my channel. That's a Hammer film. And then also Open Season, which had a bunch of creeps in there, played by Peter Fonda, Richard Lynch, and John Philip Law. So I've reviewed both of those films. Check out those reviews on my channel. And this film, Fright, this is really almost like you're going to watch this and recognize elements of it, of the home invasion aspect, of, you know, the slasher aspects, but it's mostly going to be from films that followed this one. So this really was kind of a trend-setting film in a lot of ways. Essentially, the plot is Susan George is a babysitter, okay, one of the first babysitters in peril movies, who goes to this house. It's an old house out in the country. Great setting for this kind of a film. And the owners even talk about, like, oh, we're probably going to move in a couple months. And the father, who she thinks is the father, well, he is. He's the husband. But there's a backstory there with the ex-husband. But we'll get to that in a moment. He even makes a joke, oh, don't mind the ghosts and the poltergeists. And his wife really gets, like, irritated with him as they're driving to the restaurant, saying you shouldn't have said that to that poor girl. But it's that kind of house. It has that kind of a feel. So she meets the little kid who's just going into bed. I mean, all she's going to have to do is just basically sit there and make sure the kid doesn't wake up. And the husband and wife are going to go meet some friends at a bar, and they leave, and she starts getting a little creeped out. She hears some noises. There's a really good jump scare involving something outside that's blowing in the wind. It's really clever stuff. You know, back then, this was not like when you went to the movies and you saw something like that, you were like, oh, another one of those. There weren't that many of them up to this point. And then she's got a boyfriend that comes around, played by Dennis Waterman, who Roy mentioned. I'm not really familiar with him that much. But he's kind of a pest, and he's horny. Surprise, surprise. So he's peeking in on her a few times, and at one point, they start to get hot and heavy, but then she decides she has to turn it down a notch, and she gets pretty irritated at him and says that he shouldn't be doing things like looking in the window. And she points to a window and he says, I never looked in that window. Well, anyway, he starts to fill in some of the blanks about the house. Okay. There was actually an attempted murder in the house. And the babysitter, Susan George, learns that the guy that she met is like the new husband of the woman. Her first husband tried to strangle her and got taken away to an institution, supposedly. Okay. And he's played by Ian Bannon, who was in, dozens upon dozens of things, including Braveheart, many years later. Oh, and the wife is played by Honor Blackman, who was, of course, in Goldfinger, and also in Jason and the Argonauts as Hera. That's how I Knew her way back in the day. And you just basically have a really good story, like a home invasion, babysitter in peril story. The couple at the restaurant get a little nervous, the wife does, and calls. So a couple things happen with the phone. She gets nervous. They find out some additional information. They stop at a police station. They're talking about the ex-husband, and the police sergeant is taking a report, and he's like, "How do you spell psychotic?" And he's going to, and the husband says, "Well, you're going to have to spell it Murder if you don't hurry up." It's pretty funny. So eventually everyone gets to the house, but not after. The babysitter has to have a contest of wills with the crazy ex-husband, who sometimes looks at her and thinks that it's the wife, who gets the child involved, so the child is in peril. There's some really good camera work in here. There's one scene where he's got his arms around Susan George, and she's like terrified, but he sees her as Honor Blackman, and then the camera spins around, and it's Honor Blackman, because we're seeing what he sees. But you don't even notice where they cut the shot. It's very clever. And at the end, the police come. They do some things right. They do some things wrong. There's some knives involved, as is typical in these films. And a couple people screw up, and they have to try to account for his psychotic tendencies. And I'll just leave it at there. Leave it at that. It's really good. An hour and 27 minutes. Just a very solid film all around. I really enjoyed it. Thought it was really good. And Susan George, I've seen her in some British films, Straw Dogs, some episodes of British television, anthology shows and things like that. And of course, things like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. And I gotta say, she went back and forth flawlessly, effortlessly. You would never watch Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and think that she was British. You would never get a clue. She does a really good job in this, playing this young babysitter. Okay, that leads us to The Black Panther from 1977. Directed by Ian Merrick, starring Donald Sumter as Donald Nielsen. Now, this is based on a real-life case, and I did read a little bit about it. It's creepy and a little sad and tragic. Now, Donald Sumter, I'm looking at him going, I kind of recognize this guy, but when I saw a picture of him on IMDb with less hair and also gray hair, it kind of clicked. He's been in such films as Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Eastern Promises. I kind of recognize him as an older guy. His wife is played by Marjorie Yates. She's very good. And basically, he's an ex-military guy who was posted in Africa and a few other places, who kind of is trying to adjust to civilian life. He kind of treats his wife and his teenage daughter like during the military. He barks at them. There's some very uncomfortable scenes with the family at dinner. You cannot make a mistake with this guy. He will fly into a rage. I think he has a room in the attic, and it looks like a barracks. He's got weapons, he's got maps, and from there, he plans out his crime spree. And he basically starts out going to these small rural post offices. I think they might call them sub post offices, or maybe at the time. And a lot of them are connected to houses. That's the postmaster lives right there. And then he'll actually go into the house too. He's like looking for more money. So on more than a few occasions, he's walking around these old houses and the stairs are creaking. People wake up. He ended up murdering a few people. And, a couple times he had to run away and after wounding people and things like that. He wears all black, including a black mask. That's why they called him the Black Panther. And essentially what he does is he will tell his wife, I'm going to travel. I have some carpentry work I'm going to do. I have to go here. I have to go to Scotland. I have to go to this town. And he basically will set up a little camp in the woods and reenact that military lifestyle where he will hunt some rabbits and he will then go into town and scope things out. And they show him exercising. He's not like a big physically imposing guy, but you believe that he's very in shape. And in fact, when he tussles with some of these postmasters, he's, he doesn't necessarily get the better of them right away, but there's a scene when the police think, we're gonna cut off all the roads and he's not gonna get out. Well, he's already booking it across the moors. He's like running. He's heading for the hills. He's already gone. So he does use his military skills to pretty good advantage in some regards. And then eventually he tries a kidnapping scheme where he kidnaps an heiress to a wealthy family, a teenage girl. And, he's trying to get the ransom, trying to avoid the police. There are screw ups. I mean, they go to the police. There's lots of screw ups. He's got the girl. He's already scoped out the place where he's going to keep the girl. It's in an underground. I won't tell you where, but it's underground. And things don't go well at the end. But that's also why he was arrested. I mean, and I won't really go into detail. I mean, you can read about the true crime nature of this case if you want. I spent about an hour reading about it. It's pretty sad and horrible. But yeah, the guy was just like, he was just addicted to that lifestyle. You know, like he wanted to use his military skills for something, reconnaissance and planning and everything. And he apparently just couldn't stop. So, two very interesting films. Fright, an hour and 27 minutes. The Black Panther, an hour and 37 minutes. Fright, I watched on Tubi here in the United States. The Black Panther, I watched on Hoopla, which is a streaming service affiliated with your library card here, but I believe it's also on Plex. So just check justwatch.com to find out where these are streaming. But once again, these were suggestions from Roy, from Blue Roy Movies. Check out his channel. And this was from an interview that he did with Jim on Jim's movie channel. Check out Jim's channel and come back again for more movie reviews. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and I'll check you next time. Thanks.